Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. Who is the best option for Lamar Jackson if he leaves the Baltimore Ravens? Out of all of the guys who got the franchise tag, would you tag him? Would you trade him? Would you extend him? And who is your favorite quarterback out of the top four rookies in this year's draft? We're talking about all that and more on a Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. Let's roll.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Football fans, it is a Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast, and it is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of the NFL. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Today, I am one of your hosts, Tyler Rowland, local expert for the Tennessee Titans, here with my co-host, Alex Clancy, local expert for the Arizona Cardinals. Lamar Jackson has been the biggest story in the NFL world. He got the non-exclusive franchise tag from the Baltimore Ravens, and that gives teams around the NFL the ability to give an offer to Lamar Jackson, with the ability for the Baltimore Ravens to match that offer. If the Ravens decide not to match that offer, then the new team will take Lamar Jackson, whatever contract they agreed to, and give the Baltimore Ravens 2 first-round picks. So there is a realistic possibility we could see Lamar change teams. There is also the realistic possibility that he ends up back in Baltimore. But, Alex, if Lamar Jackson does not end up back in Baltimore, which team do you think he would be the best fit on? I have a few options here. You can go off the board if you need to, but the Miami Dolphins, the Atlanta Falcons, the Carolina Panthers, the Washington Commanders. I got some wild cards here. The Houston Texans, and then the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, let me just say this. I know that in the past 24 hours or so, a ton of these teams have come out publicly and said, we're not pursuing Lamar Jackson. But of course, you don't want to say that you're pursuing Lamar Jackson, alienate the players in your locker room, the quarterbacks in your locker room, and then if the Ravens match the offer, which you had to put in all the work to present to Lamar Jackson, then you got to go back to your players and tell them why they shouldn't have their feelings hurt that you went so hard after Lamar Jackson. So no surprise, and me personally, I'm not fooled by those reports to think that any of the teams that reported that actually believe that. So out of the teams I listed, or even if you have a different one in mind, who do you think Lamar would be the best fit with going forward?
Best fit is interesting terminology, because I think all of those teams are yuck boxes with Lamar Jackson, the quarterback. Like, I just don't think any of them really have the ecosystem built to where he can really thrive. You know, who has the
Miami?
best ecosystem? No, because it's got to be down the field, man. And Lamar Jackson has gotten better as a passer. I trust Tua with his – Lamar Jackson is not an accurate passer of the football. I don't care what metrics you look at. On 3rd and 9, he's one of the last quarterbacks I want having the ball if he's got to throw the ball in a tight window. Okay? I'd much rather have Tua. They're both injury prone. The one for me, if I were to pick one team who has made things like this happen every single year, is the 49ers. And it's like, if you're going to run the ball the way you're going to run the ball, unfortunately, though, that is an offense that's set on quarterback accuracy as well. But I think it's just a little bit different. And the best fit is the Ravens. I trust him. The best fit is the Ravens. It still is, you know, and maybe the Ravens are like, you know what? We'll match whatever. We don't want to set the number. We don't want to be bidding with ourselves. So out of, like, if I had to pick one of the teams, I may pick Atlanta. I just don't think that Lamar Jackson can just go anywhere and be as impactful as he's been in Baltimore, regardless of how great of a talent he is.
Well, I'm with you there. He's not somebody who just fits into every single system and what every coach wants to do at the quarterback position. But I do got to go back to Miami. And Alex, I don't know how long we're going to be doing this show together, but I'm going to be trying to put a good quarterback in Miami for as long as we do it. It will never end ever. But listen, I agree with you on some of the things that you said. You don't want Lamar constantly throwing through tight windows and things like that. Well, one way to make windows bigger is they have the fastest wide receivers in the NFL. Also, at the end of the day, like with your 49ers pick, that did make sense. I didn't know if I should write that down. I get it. But even though, you would like to see a pure, accurate quarterback, in San Francisco's offense, I think Kyle Shanahan, I trust his intelligence and his wizardry with offense to get the best out of Lamar and all the pieces. But I kind of feel like that with Mike McDaniel right now in Miami as well. And I feel like Lamar, South Beach, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, like it just feels good. And I just want to see it. I just think it would be fantastic. It would make Miami a lot more interesting as a team. I don't know. I guess it comes down to I don't believe in Tua, especially after the injury concerns. I don't think that's a long-term answer for Miami. We heard about Miami looking to get in the Tom Brady business last year before they got in trouble for it. So I think that they aren't sold on Tua like they tell us they are in the media behind closed doors. So I think Lamar in Miami would actually be a really good fit. But I think that San Francisco is a solid option as well. I do just want to take a moment and talk about the Texans. We like the Texans here. We like D'Amico Ryans. We think they got a clean slate. The Texans, if they started this whole thing with D'Amico Ryans running the defense and then Lamar Jackson at quarterback and built from there with all their picks, and they have enough picks to give it to the Ravens and do the deal. They don't have a ton of high-priced players that they have to keep around so they can make it work money-wise. I know it's a long shot, but I think Houston is a dark horse candidate that would make some sense.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that offense is ready to bud with John Mechie hopefully coming back healthy with this health scare. Like, even though that, that's a Bryce Young kind of thing. I mean, you have his wide receiver from college, but like, Mike, let me ask you a question because everybody talks about the same teams all the time. Lamar. Okay. Let me ask you a question. Why aren't people talking more about this? And the reason why is the money would kind of match up and both teams could win with this. Why are we not talking about Aaron Rodgers for Lamar Jackson? Like, why is Aaron Rodgers not being discussed with quarterbacks who could potentially be on the move, who are set to make a lot of money? Like, don't you think that Rashad Bateman and Mark Andrews in that run game and that defense with Aaron Rodgers calling the shots could be a better situation than the Jets? And they do have draft capital as well if they need to give up draft picks to get Lamar Jackson also because they traded Devontae Adams. Like, is that completely Looney Tunes to think that shouldn't be at least discussed?
Well, I think Aaron Rodgers to the Ravens is something that could potentially be discussed, but the problem is Lamar Jackson to the Packers is a non-starter because of Jordan Love. Whether you agree that they should not get Lamar Jackson, they're getting ready to get rid of Aaron Rodgers because they want to play Jordan Love. So because they don't want to have the big contract.
No. That's not necessarily the case. That's not necessarily the case. They want to get rid of Aaron Rodgers. Jordan Love was a quarterback that they drafted way too early a couple years ago that happens to be there. If they could have Lamar Jackson and not Jordan Love with Aaron Jones, it would just be Baltimore's offense pretty much in Green Bay. They don't have the receivers. They have a pretty good offensive line. It's cold weather. It's what Lamar Jackson is used to. But let's not. They're not choosing Jordan Love. They're choosing not Aaron Rodgers.
I guess that's fair. That's a bar right there. And with that in mind, we will move forward here. There are 6 players who got the franchise tag. We've talked about Lamar a lot, so we'll probably keep him on the back burner here. But with those 6 players that got the franchise tag, would you keep them on the franchise tag for a year? Would you extend them? Would you try to trade them? We're going to dissect all of that and more. And at the end of the show, we're going to pick our top rookie quarterback from this year's class. With all that being said, before we get into that, do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is the #1 sports book in America. And look, guys, I know the NFL season is over, but the NBA season, this is the best part of the NBA season. And right now, new customers to FanDuel can get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back, even if your first bet doesn't win. So for me, you look at the money line, the point spread. With NBA games, you can even bet how many points somebody's going to score, how many rebounds they'll get, how many threes someone is going to make. And me personally, I think the most fun thing to bet on with sports is a single game parlay for the NBA. Freaking Kevin Durant, 30-plus points. Devin Booker, 25-plus points. DeAndre Ayton, 10-plus rebounds. Chris Paul, 10-plus assists. Do they have any other players? It doesn't matter. You have those four, so just keep them on the floor. Kevin Durant, 3 3-pointers made. You bet a little to win a lot. It makes all these NBA games so fun to watch. And the FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe. It's secure. It's super easy to use. It makes gambling on sports a great time. Don't miss your chance to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/locked on. That's FanDuel.com/locked on to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Locked on NFL Thursday. Sorry, just got done.
Busted.
Recording mine. Busted. Thanks for making Locked on NFL your first listen as Tyler removes the overlay from FanDuel as we speak. That's in real-time
Love
existential
FanDuel.
right
I'm leaving it up.
So Lamar Jackson is fascinating. And let me ask you this before, and this is just the topic that everybody talks about. Do you think, and give me like a 10 to 15 second answer, do you think that there's actual NFL collusion with this? Or do you think that other teams don't want to set the market that Cleveland did with Deshaun Watson, which seems like an absolute, asinine move that Cleveland made?
Has it been spoken about out loud? No. Has it been whispered behind closed doors? Yes. So I don't think this is like collusion that could be proven, where all the NFL teams got together and they all said, all right, hands in the middle. Don't give Lamar a deal on 3. 1, 2, 3. Like, I don't think it's that. But I do think that everybody is saying, I can't give him a fully guaranteed contract, because then with that and Watson, it becomes precedent. And also want to say, how dare you give me 15 seconds to answer anything? I've never been able to talk that quick in my life.
I know. That's fair. Same with me. And listen, you know what other professional entity needs this? Major League Baseball. Have owners just don't. They were so close a couple of years ago, and then Bryce Harper and Manny Machado, and like it went bingo, bango, bungo. And it's like, okay, now you're further back from where you were before. I think that this is the right thing for NFL owners to do. Lamar Jackson has missed half of the games the last 2 seasons. It's not because it's Lamar Jackson. It's because they don't want to set a precedent of giving $200 million guaranteed, especially to a guy who hasn't played half of the games in the last 2 seasons.
Yep.
Like, if this is Patrick Mahomes, giddy up. If this is Joe Burrow, 1,000%. But we need to get away from this. The next quarterback to get paid gets paid more than the one that just got paid. It's stupid. It's just dumb. Anyways, something that's not dumb for a lot of teams is the franchise tag. And teams utilize it strategically in an effort to have like a hang on and wait for the contract extension coming, in the future, in the near future, or just as, a placeholder for the future for the team. So Tyler's going to run down a couple names of players that have been tagged, and if we think they should stay as tagged or get an actual extension afterwards. Tyler?
Well, obviously you have Lamar, $32 million, the non-exclusive franchise tag. We've talked a ton about Lamar, so we'll leave him to the side. But I think the 3 most interesting tag guys were 3 running backs. And you have Saquon Barkley for the Giants, Josh Jacobs for the Raiders, Tony Pollard for the Cowboys, coming off a pretty significant injury there. All of those dudes are going to make about $10 million on a 1-year deal on the franchise tag. But Alex, with all 3 of those guys, if you had the choice to, and this isn't, I can't even say the name of the game, but you get 3 options. You got to decide what to do with them. This isn't that where you get, 1 for each guy. You can choose anything you want for any guy. But if you had to play with the player on the tag on a 1-year deal, just leave them on their 1-year deal going into the season. You could extend the player to a long-term deal, or you could trade the player. What would you do with Barkley, Jacobs, and Pollard?
Jacobs is the easy one. Have him play on the tag. Make him do it again. Because that was the first year where he really showed that he had first-round talent. What did he get drafted? 15th or 16th, 17th, something like that.
16th,
That was the most out-of-the-blue performance from last season. Maybe besides Geno Smith. Like, that was like, whoa, what are you talking about? Like, he was a fantasy football darling, something that Josh Jacobs had never been.
Before you move on, can I say with Jacobs, because we'll just cross him off the list and make it quick, I would trade him for those same reasons. I don't buy it.
Interesting.
I don't think that he's that kind of running back that you would consider. I don't think he's Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry. I don't think he's on that level. personally. I think it was a contract year, vengeance year thing for Jacobs. I
Yeah.
would trade him right now because I don't think that he's going to be worth a franchise tag next
But
year,
see-
and then you lose him for nothing.
See, but the thing is, that's a Josh McDaniels product. The only thing that changed was the new offense. And that's what Josh McDaniels does. He works very well with running backs. That's what he's done. They brought Brandon Bolden over there for crying out loud. Right when he was the head coach with Josh McDaniels. Like, I don't know. I could see that. I would not.
I don't trust Josh McDaniels. That's probably why.
Fair enough. Ask Derek Carr about that too. So like with Saquon and Tony Pollard, Tony Pollard is a victim of his circumstance because Tony Pollard is going to have to play behind or next to Zeke again. Like, I don't see them moving on from, because Jerry Jones, that's his, that's his favorite player maybe that he's ever drafted.
His favorite child.
And it's wild. So Tony Pollard is going to be hamstrung by that. Now with Saquon, it just so happens that Daniel Jones got a lot of cheese. Saquon's the toughest one for me because if say you extended him and didn't give him Gurley money, maybe gave him Derrick Henry money, he's still younger and he's still he's injury concerns. But it's like, if you extend him, okay, I get that. If you have him on the tag, okay, I get that. If you trade him for a second round pick, okay, I get that. I mean, it's just kind of, he's a victim of a bad offense that's getting better. But I don't know what the right move would be for Saquon. Honestly, I'm going to take
For me, I like I said, I would trade Josh Jacobs, capitalize on that if you possibly can. With Tony Pollard, because of the injury, you got to keep him on the tag. I don't think you're going to be able to get proper value in a trade because he's injured. I don't want to extend him because he's coming off of an injury, so I'm not doing that at this time. I tag him, see if he can come back during the season, look like himself, and then go from there. But with Saquon, I would do an extension with Saquon because I think out of these three, Saquon has the biggest ability to go above and beyond. Like, Saquon could have an even better year now, fully removed from his injuries in an offense that is getting better. As you said, I think Saquon could absolutely blow up and get Christian McCaffrey money. So what I would do is I would use a Derrick Henry model for Saquon Barkley, where basically you give an extension to Saquon so he doesn't play on the franchise tag, but all you give him is guaranteed money for 2 years as if he was playing on the franchise tag. So give him $24 million guaranteed on a 3-year deal where the last year isn't guaranteed, just so he has security for 2 seasons and he knows that he's getting high-level running back money, because there's a chance that he goes above and beyond that payday in this offense. So I would extend Saquon, but a Derrick Henry style extension where it's only really 2 years of commitment. But that's how I would look at it. There are two. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say one last thing was because he's fascinating. Like,
if
I'm other teams, I'm looking to trade for Saquon. Like, there's a team, like, I've brought up Kansas City multiple times as the perfect home run, because, like, Saquon is one of the closer guys to Shady McCoy, kind of. He's more of a bruiser, but he would fit so well in that offense. He's everything. So Isaiah Pacheco's great. Jerick McKinnon's great. But if you can trade for Saquon, give him that 2-year contract extension, like, they are going to be undefeated watch next year, regardless of who they have for the wide receiver. And if, like, they're going to draft well, like, that's what they do. Like, if I'm other teams and need one little piece, I'd happily pay $12 million a year for the next 2 years for Saquon services.
Well, we always do really good NBA comparisons, and I want to do a comparison of Andrew Wiggins, former first-round pick, had some real flashes of greatness in Minnesota, maybe not the flashes that Saquon had showed early in his career for the Giants, but you finally move him into an offense where he doesn't have to be the number one option. He doesn't feel the pressure of his draft pick, and he has a ton of space and people around him who compliment him. That could be like dropping Saquon into the Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah, they're already a great organization. They're going to create more space for him. They're not going to need him to be the number 2 overall pick in the draft. They just need him to be a great player within their offense, and that could set him up to play his best football, being in a situation where he doesn't have to worry about the pressure of New York and the draft pick and the money and just go out there and play ball in a great offense. And that could be the very best we see of Saquon Barkley. But there were 2 other candidates. Evan Ingram, I think we've talked about this before, going to keep him on the tag and see if he can do it again. Deron Payne, $18 million on the franchise tag. I think you extend Deron Payne if you can. He's incredible interior defensive lineman. So not a lot of conversation needs to happen with those two guys. I think the decision is pretty obvious. But we're going to move forward and talk about the quarterbacks in this draft. Just a simple segment of out of the top 4 quarterbacks in the draft, who do you believe in the most? Who will have the best career going forward? We're going to discuss that in just a moment. Before we do, want to thank you guys for making the Locked On NFL podcast your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. You got Damian Parson, Keith Sanchez. They're going to provide in-depth coverage and analysis on all the biggest prospects in the NFL draft with deep dives into sleepers and hidden gems as well. Find the Locked On NFL Draft podcast wherever you get your podcast and the Locked On NFL Draft YouTube channel, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Football fans, we are going to cap off this Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. We talked about Lamar Jackson's potential suitors and who we'd like to see him suited up with next year. Talked about the people who got franchise tagged and what we would do with them going forward. Now going to have just a simple discussion on the quarterbacks at the top of the 2023 NFL draft. Who do you believe in? Who do you trust? Alex, there are 4 guys at the beginning here. We have Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, or Bryce Young out of Alabama, CJ Stroud out of Ohio State, Anthony Richardson out of Florida, Will Levis out of Kentucky. Out of your team with the Cardinals, the team that you cover, they have a quarterback. Yeah, he's banged up, he's injured, but they're not in the market for a franchise quarterback early in the draft, or at least that's what we think right now. Let's assume that that is true. You're just an innocent bystander here. Out of these 4 quarterbacks, which one would you bet your money on if the Cardinals had to take another one?
Anthony Richardson's making it interesting, but when they showed the best quarterback performances in the combine, look at the other names on that list. Not great. Not great transition to the NFL. I think Dante Culpepper was second on the overall list or third on the overall list. Everybody else was a ham sandwich. You know, and it's interesting. So I don't know what that means. I think it's a lot to take on because nobody was really expecting that great of a performance, especially. I mean, the broad jump and the vertical, it's just like, who cares? He's an NFL quarterback. What does it matter? For me, and I don't know why he's not above and beyond the guy, it's CJ Stroud. Like, he's big. He's got a killer arm. He's not 6 foot 204 or 5'10", 204 like Bryce Young is. And Will Levis, it's just Tim Couch. When I think Kentucky, all I think is Tim Couch. That's it. He's got a cannon. He's the Mac McClung of viral videos for his absolute torch cannon and his sexy release that Will Levis has. It's CJ Stroud. Like, I don't think everybody could have made Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jackson Smith and Jigba look that great. Chris, over the last couple seasons, I think CJ Stroud had something to do with it, especially starting as a freshman. He's tried and true. So I'd pick CJ Stroud out of all of them.
That's funny. I didn't know what I was going to get. We didn't tell each other what our answers were going to be, but yeah, I also am a CJ Stroud guy. I think he's the best quarterback in the draft. And honestly, he reminds me a little bit of Joe Burrow, another guy who spent some time with Ohio State. And I get all this flack because I'm from Ohio. I do root for the Buckeyes, but I wasn't some guy who was super high on Justin Fields or JT Barrett or Cardale Jones or anything like that. So I don't feel like I have any kind of, standard bias for Ohio State players. What I have a bias for is guys who throw with accuracy. And it was funny to me, like you said, everybody was freaking out about the combine with Anthony Richardson, but the combine didn't change anything about how I viewed Richardson and Stroud. It just cemented it. Yeah, Richardson, ridiculous athlete, freak athlete, but he can't throw the ball like Stroud. In all the drills, it was obvious. Stroud was more accurate, better release, better mechanics, better accuracy. He throws with anticipation. He can throw the ball to all 3 layers of the field and feather it over defenders. I mean, Stroud is what quarterback play is. That and no, he doesn't have the fancy athleticism like even Levis or Richardson or the playmaking ability where he runs around the pocket like a freaking crazy man like Bryce Young. He doesn't have all that. He just has the normal, boring quarterback traits that win football games on and on and on throughout eternity. So for me, CJ Stroud has the size that you want. And while he didn't showcase all the athleticism all the time like some of these other guys, when he played against Georgia in a game that mattered more than any other game he's played in, he showed requisite playmaking, requisite pocket mobility. And that's why I compare it to Joe Burrow a little bit. Burrow isn't like Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts the way he runs around, even Mahomes or Josh Allen. Burrow isn't like that. But is Burrow easy to sack in the pocket? No. He moves around. He is able to maneuver and navigate the pocket to get away with people. He has enough athleticism to where he's not a sitting duck. And if something opens up, like we saw Burrow do against Kansas City, he's going to run and get the first down. 10, 12, 15 yards, he can give you that. He can do it when he's asked. So to me, Stroud checks every box. He may not have a fire hose like Levis or Richardson does, but I saw him throw deep balls right after Anthony Richardson in the combine, and he could do just fine. So I'm with you there. I'm a big CJ Stroud guy. I think he's the best quarterback in the draft.
Yeah, and it's interesting. And there's one thing that, like, because of his injuries, not CJ Stroud, because of this player's injuries in 2022, he may dip in the draft. And I feel like wherever CJ Stroud goes, Jackson Smith-Njigba needs to go. And next year,
Right.
wherever he goes, Marvin Harrison Jr. should be looked at for that team. Like, we're going to see this more and more because there are very few 1%ers when it comes to wide receivers in college football. Like, true bona fide Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, no doubt about it, home runs or as close as draft picks can get. Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to be that guy. He was that guy before he got hurt, which allowed Marvin Harrison Jr. to really, spread his proverbial wings. Like, if you're looking at CJ Stroud and you draft him, the next thing on your mind, especially if you're wide receiver needy, is how do we get back in the end of the first round and draft his wide receiver fringe one? Like, I don't know. I think it's just a match made in heaven at the NFL level again.
There are two teams off the top of my mind that could pull something like that off. Number one is the Detroit Lions, who have the 6th overall pick and then 18. And then, of course, Houston Texans, who have the 2nd overall pick and then number 12, I believe.
Yeah, that's more what I was thinking.
So
you
they
trade
could pull
back
that off.
Yeah, and I think that I know that they have needs elsewhere, but you know what? The Texans need wide receiver help tomorrow.
Yes.
They drafted a couple nice pieces. They've got Dameon Pierce, but you want to start, you want to jump start, you give him one of his favorite wide receivers. And one last thing I'll say that separates him from potentially all of the others. Bryce Young has this, but like you can't teach composure. You can't. Either you have it and you learned it and you're mature. He has composure. He's not the most talented quarterback we've ever seen, but he's cool. And being cool and being a pocket quarterback, you know what that does? That elongates your career. It keeps you away from having to run the ball to be effective. I think CJ Stroud's a home run. I don't know why he's not looked at as the number one, no question about it, overall pick. Or, quarterback pick.
I'm with you on that. And for any reason he drops to number 3, your Arizona Cardinals are going to get a boatload of picks. Somebody come up to get him. And honestly, I could only hope that it's my team calling your team to make that happen. But with that in mind, that is going to do it for us today on the Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. The all season's rolling on. Make sure you check out the Friday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast with Chris Carter and your boy Q, breaking down all the biggest stories in the NFL. Remember, Monday through Friday, free NFL content all year round, all platforms here on the Locked On NFL podcast. That's going to do it for us today. Stay safe out there, football fans. Bye.